The night was still, the kind of quiet that carried both comfort and sorrow. Beneath the roof of a modest home, Diep sat with her thoughts swirling like restless winds. Life had not been kind to her. She once lived a simple rhythm, rising early to tend the garden, carrying baskets of vegetables to the market, and dreaming of a peace untouched by storms. But peace had been fractured the day she opened her door to a child. That child, Nhi, stood on her threshold with wide, searching eyes that carried both sorrow and hope. Diep had hesitated. How could she, a woman already carrying loneliness, bear the weight of another fragile soul? James, the man who had once been her anchor in her trial, was far away, entangled in battles she could neither see nor understand. And yet, when the little girl smiled, something shifted deep within her. It wasn't just a smile. It was innocence untouched by betrayal, light undimmed by cruelty. In that curve of lips, in that spark of resilience, Diep saw James. Not the James who had left, burdened with his wars, but the James whose quiet strength had once held her hand through every storm. His presence lived in her memory, and now it shimmered in the laughter of this child. Love in the smallest gestures. As days passed, Diep found herself becoming more than caretaker. She became a guide. She showed Nhi how to wash her hands before meals, how to braid her hair, how to listen to bedtime stories. Through these small rituals, she discovered a truth she had never known. Love was not only about waiting for James's return. Love was a choice, a decision to nurture, to protect, to build something lasting even when the future was wrapped in uncertainty. Still, loneliness clung to her in the late hours. She would sit by the window, gazing at distant stars, asking questions no night sky could answer. Where was James? Did he think of her? Did he still dream of the life they had once whispered into the dark? When despair pressed heavily on her chest, Nyi's laughter cut through the silence. The child's joy became her anchor, a lifeline pulling her back each time she faltered. James in exile. Far away, in the corner of a dimly lit office, James sat with shoulders bowed under the weight of contracts, betrayals, and relentless ambition. For months, he fought enemies eager to see him fall. Every day felt like a battlefield, every night ended with exhaustion pressing down like stone. Yet, even amid the chaos, Diep's voice lingered in his ears. On the phone, her voice was soft, speaking of Nyi's small triumphs. She smiled today when I taught her to write her name. James would fall silent then, the ache in his throat impossible to mask. He had never met the child, yet through her laughter, he heard echoes of something he feared he had lost forever: innocence, hope, a future worth fighting for. At first, James told himself he could not return. There were debts to settle, battles to win, enemies to unmask. But the more he buried himself in work, the more thoughts of Too Diep and Nhi pulled at his heart. One sleepless night, he opened a drawer and found a photograph of Too Diep smiling under the sunlight, taken long before his empire began to crumble. He pressed the photo to his chest and whispered, "Wait for me." In that moment, clarity pierced the fog. What was the value of power and victory, if not shared with the ones he loved? Slowly, he began to shed the cycle of revenge and pride. He made different choices, not for survival, but for the chance to protect a fragile happiness waiting at home. The homecoming, at last, James returned. He stepped out of the car in front of Too Diep's modest house, his heart racing as though he were confessing his love for the first time. The scent of fresh earth and vegetables drifted on the evening air. With trembling hands, he knocked on the door. The door opened. There stood Too Diep, Nhi cradled in her arms. The child looked at him shyly, then smiled. James froze, breath caught in his chest. In that small smile, he saw not only innocence but also a reflection of himself, his strength, his flaws, his longing. When he lifted his gaze, Too Diep was there, tears trembling in her eyes. For a long moment, silence spoke louder than words. The air was heavy, tender, as though the world had paused to witness. James wanted to say 1,000 things, apologies for his absence, explanations for his silence, promises for the future, but nothing seemed enough. It was Too Diep who broke the silence. Her arms still wrapped around Nhi, she whispered, "You came back." James stepped forward, his voice raw and unguarded. "I should never have left. But I had to fight battles that would have destroyed us all. And through every night, it was you I thought of, you, and the little girl whose smile reached me even in the darkest places." Nhi squirmed gently in Too Diep's embrace, her wide eyes studying him with innocent curiosity. Then, with surprising courage, she stretched out her small hand. "Are you the one she always talks about?" Something inside James broke open. He knelt down, lowering himself to her level, and took her hand with trembling fingers. "Yes," he whispered, "I am. And I promise, from this moment on, I will be here for you, for both of you." Choosing love over pride. Tears finally spilled down Too Diep's cheeks. For so long, she had carried the burden alone, raising Nhi, protecting her, working tirelessly to keep life afloat. Doubt had often overshadowed her faith. Yet now, standing before her, James was not the powerful CEO she once knew. He was simply the man who had chosen love over pride. The three of them stood together in the doorway, hearts stitching themselves back into one fabric. James placed a gentle hand on Too Diep's shoulder. "I don't have all the answers yet," he admitted, "but I know this, my place is here." With you. With her. With us. Too Diep nodded, unable to speak, her arms tightening around the child. Nhi, sensing the shift, giggled softly, the sound so pure it seemed to carry into the evening air like a promise of tomorrow. For the first time in years, James felt peace. Not the hollow peace of winning a business war, but the profound peace of coming home. The lessons within. The story of James, Too Diep, and little Nhi is more than one of love and reunion. It is a meditation on the choices that shape our lives and the bonds that give them meaning. James was a man who fought corporate battles, convinced that victory would secure his future. But in the end, he discovered that triumph means little if not shared with those you love. Too Diep, with her quiet courage, proved that true love is not measured by wealth or power, but by the willingness to open one's heart, even when the world is unforgiving. And Nhi, the child who once stood frightened in the street, became the unexpected bridge that reconnected two hearts. In her innocence, James saw hope. In her laughter, Too Diep found strength. Together, they discovered that love is not simply a feeling, it is a choice, a discipline, a light that survives the darkest storms. Their story teaches us this: the greatest victories are not in wealth or pride, but in the relationships we nurture and the lives we touch. To love is to risk. To forgive is to heal. And to stay true to the people who matter most is to find a happiness no storm can ever steal away.